Unidentified, non-compliant vessels attempting a forbidden relay activation. This is a Tier 1 violation. Move to intercept. Weapons hot.
They call it the First Contact War. A simple, clean name for a messy piece of history. A story humanity tells itself about heroic defiance in the face of unprovoked aggression. A story the Turians tell of enforcing galactic law against a reckless, primitive species. Both stories are lies, convenient fictions that paper over the truth. This was not a war, it was a failure. A catastrophic, multi-layered intelligence failure that poisoned a generation and set the galaxy on a new, more dangerous trajectory. You think you know the story. You have the codex entries, the political speeches, but you don't have my files. Let's correct that. Every conflict has a catalyst, a single point where two opposing forces become destined to collide. For humanity and the Turians, that point was not a battlefield. It was a disagreement over a door and what lies behind it. To understand the failure, you must first understand the mindset of the belligerents. Let's begin with the newcomers. Humanity. In the mid-22nd century, they were a species living in a self-declared golden age. The discovery of a Prothean data cache on Mars had catapulted their technology forward by centuries. Faster than light travel, advanced energy sources, it was a dream. And like any dreamer, they saw the universe not as it was, but as they wished it to be. A glorious adventure of discovery, an empty frontier waiting to be claimed. Their first and only encounter with alien life had been with ghosts, the technological remnants of a dead species. With no living contemporaries to provide context or caution, they developed their entire interstellar strategy in a vacuum. The Systems Alliance, the first unified government in human history, was formed not out of a desire for galactic cooperation, but out of fear of the unknown other. Their military became, by necessity, an exploratory spearhead. Their prime directive was simple: expand, explore, settle. They applied the only strategic model they knew, the history of Earth's competing nations, to a galaxy they did not understand. It was a doctrine born of profound and dangerous isolation. They were charging blindly into the dark, unaware that the dark had rules, and the Turians were the ones who enforced them. The most important law in the galaxy is unwritten in any constitution, but burned into the memory of every Citadel race. It is a lesson paid for in blood and the near extinction of galactic civilization. You do not activate a dormant mass relay. Thousands of years ago, a foolishly curious species did just that. On the other side were the Rachni, a hive-minded species of biological horrors that swarmed into Citadel space, slaughtering trillions in a war that lasted for centuries. They were only stopped by uplifting the Krogan into a living weapon, a decision that created its own galactic nightmare generations later. The Rachni Wars taught the Council a lesson it would never forget. An unopened door must be assumed to hide a monster. The Turian hierarchy, as the primary military arm of the Citadel Council, sees the enforcement of this law as their most sacred duty. Their entire society is built on a foundation of militaristic discipline, collective honor, and unwavering personal accountability. To a Turian patrol commander, seeing an unknown ship attempting to activate a dormant relay is not a diplomatic incident. It is the prelude to a potential genocide. Their response is not a negotiation tactic. It is a preemptive, non-negotiable act to prevent another Rachni war. Here then is the core of the failure. Two incompatible doctrines destined to collide. Humanity's imperative, open every door. The Turian imperative, keep the most dangerous doors locked. The war didn't begin when the first shot was fired. It began the moment a human captain gave the order to cycle the activation sequence on Relay 314. The Turian patrol, acting on Citadel law, opened fire. Their goal was simple: disable the offending vessels and stop the activation. But the human fleet, with no context for galactic law, saw only an unprovoked, savage attack from a hostile alien force. Their response was equally simple and equally brutal. They returned fire, destroying the Turian patrol. The Turians failed to consider that a species could be truly ignorant of the galaxy's most fundamental law. They acted as police, but the humans saw them as pirates. The humans failed to consider that there was a law to break. They acted as explorers, but the Turians saw them as criminals. There was no communication, no attempt at de-escalation. Both sides acted on their own doctrinal assumptions, and the galaxy paid the price.
Urgent. Repeat, Shanxi is not responding. We've lost contact with the entire Third Fleet. Comms are down. They're reporting hostiles. Alien hostiles. We are under attack. This is not a drill!
From the skirmish at Relay 314, the conflict escalated with breathtaking speed. The Turians, viewing humanity as a reckless and hostile new power, moved to neutralize the threat at its source. That source was a small, unassuming colony world, Shanxi. The Turian invasion was swift and overwhelming. The small Alliance garrison was shattered. The colony fell. For the first generation of humans to experience interstellar war, Shanxi became a crucible, a place where ideologies were forged in fire, and where two of the most influential figures in modern human history would begin their journeys on two very different paths. To understand the psychological scars of this conflict, we must look at the ground truth. The sanitized military reports are useless. For the real story, we turn to the mercenaries, the privateers who fought in the ruins when the Alliance military was in full retreat. Consider the case of a small pro-human wetworks team, led by a man named Jack Harper. His unit operated in the rubble of Shanxi's settlements, a landscape of skeletal buildings under a sky choked with smoke. Their war was not one of strategy, but of brutal, close-quarters survival. One of Harper's men, Ben Hislop, became the voice of this Shanxi generation, his face a mask of pure rage. His first instinct upon seeing Turians was to scream,
"Die, skullfaces!"
and unleash a grenade launcher. This was not simple soldiering. It was visceral, personal hatred. Standing over a captured Turian, Hislop's fury was palpable.
Stinking vultures! Not enough that you bomb innocent colonists, you've got to pick through the ruins!
This rage was born of grief. As he later admitted to Harper, his brother was among the civilians wiped out in the initial bombardment. For men like Hislop, the war wasn't about galactic law or exploration rights. It was about payback. The Turians were not just an enemy, they were monsters, skull faces, an object of pure contempt. This experience, watching the official military retreat while fighting a desperate, bloody war for revenge, forged a deep-seated xenophobia and a powerful cynicism towards established authority. It created a generation of soldiers who believed that humanity could only rely on its own strength, unconstrained by treaties or alliances. Jack Harper saw this firsthand. He saw the alliance's weakness. He saw the raw, passionate, and easily manipulated anger of men like Hislop. And he saw a threat the alliance was too bureaucratic to comprehend. Shanxi did not just disillusion Jack Harper. It gave him the proof of concept for his future organization, a ruthless, intelligence-driven, humanity-first shadow government. It gave him the blueprint for Cerberus. While Harper was learning his lessons in the dirt and blood of Shanxi, another man was facing his own trial by fire, hundreds of light years away, in the sterile command rooms of Arcturus Station. His name was David Anderson. He was a young, promising second lieutenant, fresh out of the N7 program, when he was summoned for a private interview with the legendary Admiral John Grissom. Grissom, the hero of humanity's first journey through the Charon Relay, was tasked with advising Alliance Command on their next move. He laid out the impossible strategic dilemma to the young officer: engage, retreat, or surrender. He did not mince words. An all-out war with the Turians, he warned, could lead to the total annihilation of the human race. This was the crucible that forged David Anderson. He was not asked to capture a trench or defend a barricade. He was asked to weigh the fate of his entire species. His response defined his character for the rest of his life. Retreat isn't an option, he stated, his voice sure and strong. Freedom is worth fighting for. This was not the blind rage of Ben Hislop. It was a calculated belief in the core ideals of the Alliance. When Grissom pressed him, asking if he was willing to risk the life of his own wife back on Earth, Anderson did not flinch. He turned the question back on the Admiral. "Are you willing to condemn your daughter to the life of a slave?" In that moment, the two paths for humanity's future became clear. Both Jack Harper and David Anderson were patriots, forged in the same fire of the First Contact War. Both witnessed the same institutional failure of the Alliance, but their conclusions were polar opposites. Anderson, the institutional idealist, chose to believe in the system and fight to make it better from within. He would become the Alliance's greatest hero. Harper, the pragmatic radical, concluded the system itself was flawed beyond repair and that only unilateral, ruthless action could truly protect humanity. He would become the Illusive Man. And while these two men were being shaped by the conflict, a third, unseen hand was playing its own game: the Citadel Council. The official history states that the Council intervened to broker a peace. A convenient narrative. The truth is more political. The Turians are the Council's military. Why did they wait to intervene? Why allow the conflict to escalate to a full planetary invasion and a brutal human counterattack that successfully liberated Shanxi? They weren't waiting. They were watching. The delay was not bureaucratic ineptitude. It was a strategic intelligence-gathering operation. The Council used the battle for Shanxi as a field test for this new, aggressive species, and they learned three critical things. 1. Humanity was technologically advanced, capable of fighting the galaxy's foremost military power to a standstill. 2. They were militarily effective and strategically unpredictable. 3. They were expanding with an ambition that guaranteed they would soon be a major galactic power. The Council's intervention was timed perfectly. They stepped in after humanity had proven its strength by retaking Shanxi, but before the Turian hierarchy could commit its main battle fleets, which would have utterly annihilated the Alliance. Their calculus was flawless. They prevented a destabilizing full-scale war and brought a potent, ambitious new race into their sphere of influence, all while positioning themselves as benevolent peacemakers. A masterful political victory, born from the ashes of a human world. The Turian military is a model of efficiency, but every machine has its tolerances, every doctrine has its breaking point. My agents have been reviewing the archives. Speak.
Broker, I have access. Peripheral archive on Palaven. Logistical data. Relay 314 incident. Cross-referencing patrol rosters for the 314 sector. Anomaly detected.
Specify.
The patrol fleet assigned to Relay 314. It was a reserve fleet, comprised of recent academy graduates on their first long-range patrol. Not a veteran unit. Standing orders would have been rigid. Zero tolerance. No room for interpretation. High probability of doctrinal inflexibility in a first contact scenario.
They sent children to guard the most dangerous door in the galaxy. Confirmation of another layer of failure. Good work, Cypher 9. Continue monitoring. Broker out. So the war ended. Treaties were signed. Humanity was granted an embassy on the Citadel, and the official history was written. A neat, tidy story of a misunderstanding, resolved by the wisdom of the Council. But the truth lies not in the official records, but in the language, in the lingering scars. To humanity, it was the First Contact War, a name that implies an existential struggle for survival, framing them as heroic victims who defended their homes against a hostile aggressor. To the Turians, it was the Relay 314 incident, a minor, almost trivial term for a localized police action. It frames them as enforcers of the law and humanity as reckless criminals who needed to be disciplined. War versus incident. The gap between those two words is a chasm of resentment that has never truly been bridged. You can see the poison at work for decades after. It's in the political maneuvering of Ambassador Donnell Udina, a man whose entire career was built on an aggressive, often belligerent push for human advancement, fueled by a deep-seated distrust of the council he was forced to negotiate with. He saw the galaxy not as a community to join, but as a series of rivals to overcome. You can hear the echoes of Shanxi in the words of Turians like Garrus Vakarian. He would become one of humanity's greatest allies, but even he carried the legacy of the conflict. He once told Commander Shepard about his father's perspective on the war. His father, a CSEC officer, never forgave humanity. He believed the incident proved humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable to be trusted. He taught his son that humanity's ambition was a threat to galactic stability, a lesson Garrus would have to unlearn through loyalty and friendship, but one that shaped the views of an entire generation of Turians. The peace was a political construct, not a resolution. The animosity festered, creating a cold war of suspicion that defined Human-Turian relations for the next 20 years. And from this poisoned peace, the two paths that began on Shanxi diverged completely. David Anderson walked the path of integration. He became a decorated Alliance hero, the poster child for human potential. He was the first human candidate for the Spectres, a position he was ultimately denied thanks to the machinations of a Turian Spectre named Saren Arterius, a man whose own brother had died during the First Contact War, fueling a fanatical hatred of all humanity. Anderson's entire career was a struggle to prove humanity deserved a seat at the table, to earn respect through service and sacrifice. He believed in the system, even when it failed him. Jack Harper walked the path of unilateralism. His exposure to the alien monolith on Shanxi fundamentally changed him, granting him insights into threats the Alliance couldn't even comprehend. He saw their retreat, their political compromises with the Council, as unforgivable weakness. He shed his name, his identity, and became the Illusive Man. He built Cerberus to be what the Alliance could not, an organization with the singular, ruthless focus of ensuring human ascendancy, unburdened by morality, accountability, or alien interests. One man, fighting for a seat at the table, the other, determined to build a table of his own, and, if necessary, to flip the galaxies over. The entire political and clandestine landscape of your time, the conflicts you have fought, the alliances you have forged, all of it is a direct consequence of the choices these two men made in response to the same catastrophic failure. So, do not call it the First Contact War. Call it what it was: a chain reaction of failure. A failure of Citadel policy to proactively identify and contact a burgeoning species on its doorstep. A failure of Turian military doctrine, executed by an inexperienced crew, that allowed no room for nuance or diplomacy. And a profound failure of human intelligence to comprehend the ancient, rule-bound galactic stage they had so eagerly leapt upon. These failures established humanity's reputation as a species that was aggressive, unpredictable, and dangerously ambitious. They created the ideological schism personified by Anderson and the Illusive Man that would define human conflict for decades. The official histories are clean, the treaties are signed, but the echoes of Shanxi still shape the galaxy. They still shape you. The question is not who was right or wrong, but who has learned from the failure, and who is doomed to repeat it. Stay connected to the network. The truth is our only directive. Broker, signing off.